Thank you. So pleased that you could all be here with us this evening. Suren, Rozana, and Chloe, thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this conversation. And I'm going to open it up shortly for if you've got questions or reflections on the film. But I've got a couple of my own first, and I just want to start by congratulating you, Chloe, all of you. The Taste of Mango. Well, first of all, we're here on the eve of its UK release. Going UK wide from Friday, but also this film has had incredible success at festivals. You won the best debut documentary at the BIFAs last year. You won an award at London Film Festival. So just to say, congratulations on the film, but also on all of the success that you've had so far. And I know it's not so easy to get a documentary distributed these days into cinemas. So congratulations. And I want to start, Chloe, by asking you about the kind of original intentions for setting out on this project. It feels a little bit kind of like it's a film that feels like a sort of letter. I'm wondering if it kind of started as a sort of letter, to your mother, to your family. But if you could start by telling us what the kind of original intentions were for the film.
Yeah, thank you for that. When I began making the film, I think it came from this real need to work through something in myself and in my family. And I had just come from art school where I was making things similarly personal and taking these difficult subjects that I couldn't quite wrap my head around and using art as a way to explore them. And so in 2018, my paternal grandmother had just passed away, and that left my mum's mum, Nana, as my last living grandparent, and I didn't have a relationship with her really. So I really felt this pull to get to know her and to understand the fractures in our family. It really began focusing mostly on her, and then it evolved slowly to be a lot more about my mum, and then also about me. And I think the letter part of it, that evolved too. The voiceover, the narration went through many different iterations, but close to the beginning of when we decided to include voiceover, I felt like it needed to be a tool to say something that I felt like I couldn't say to my mum, or as a way to work through things even more.
And can you give us a sense of, because I feel like there are moments in the film where time escapes us. So can you give us a sense of when it was that you started filming, and also, I guess, at what point was it that it sort of felt maybe not only like a kind of personal project and more like I've got a feature film on my hands here? At what point was that, would you say, in the process?
So the kind of conception of the film was in 2018, and I really started filming in 2019. And at the time when I started, I thought it was going to be a short film, mostly because I hadn't made films before, really. I mean, I'd made work for exhibition, but I hadn't made work for cinema. And so I thought I had to make a short first. So I started making that, and now I've completely forgot the question.
No, that's okay. It was at what point you sort of realized you had kind of a feature's worth of film there, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was, I started to edit the short film with an editor, Stella Heathkeer, and we began putting the footage together, and I just realized that there was so much more to what I wanted to tell than what we were going to be able to, and even what we had in the material. I knew that I was just going to have to keep filming, and that was a hard decision because it was really emotional. And at that point, I just kind of wanted to stop and be like, okay, we'll just make a short film that is not really what I intended to make, but it felt easier. And then I took a few weeks break and sat with it a lot and realized that I did want to keep going.
Thank you. And Suren, I want to bring you in at this point because if we could go back to the very beginning of the film actually kind of opens more with music than it does with visuals. And I wonder if maybe the both of you can talk about that kind of choice and the kind of approach that you took to the composition, to the original score.
It was really difficult to even begin, making music for this. I still remember the first kind of viewing I did of, I guess, the kind of nearly finished version. And it was really difficult to sort of take in. It was really painful, and I sort of I was like frozen and everything. It was a lot to take in because I was watching it as having to be this kind of composer, but also I was watching it as a family member. I was totally not ready for it. So it took a while to kind of get my head around trying to make something kind of creative and emotional. And eventually I got there. And I think I was really lucky that Chloe and I had a lot of contact, and we had loads of communication throughout it being made through like the various edits. It helped me massively from going from this complete kind of musical block to suddenly feeling like, I'd sort of found some sort of inspiration that then suddenly produced loads of music, and the music kind of sort of was like bursting forth, and after that it felt somewhat easier, almost as like once the floodgates had opened, and then the music somehow sort of just made itself.
But I feel like you're not giving yourself enough credit there. Just make it up. Also, this is his first film score, so it's so incredible. And the way that I was using some of his other music as temporary score, and a collaboration that he did with an album called Petit Oiseau, and it was a lot. The music itself wasn't heavy, but somehow that music on top of the film pulled it down, and that was a lot of the conversation we had of like, how can we counteract what might be heavy in the film with the score and make it into something more dreamlike in a way, and you did that so amazingly.
Yeah, it was funny that you had used some music I'd already made as this kind of temp score, while you were sort of working out the edit. And so then it was quite disorientating in a way for me when I was starting to watch it as, this composer head with my hat on. And usually I'd mute the parts when that music was on because I didn't want it to kind of influence me, because, initially I think, that's what added to this kind of musical block, because I had such a high expectation of what I wanted to make for it. And I felt like it had to be perfect, but also, with it being such a important or like precious kind of thing, I was like, it has to be the best thing that it could be. So, yeah, it was. I don't know. It was so difficult at the time and so intense, but it's a relief that it got finished.
And that it's beautiful, and that it really adds to the film without having that kind of emotional weight where a score sort of almost tells you how to feel. Like it feels like it's trusting of both the story and the audience, to respond in their own way without those kind of, without in that way that, a kind of overly heavy score doesn't have that trust. And I love the kind of juxtaposition with the country and western music as well, like, which is like another layer of storytelling. Rozana, I want to come to, there's a point in the film where you say to Chloe that the kinds of conversations that you're having with her on camera in the film are helping to kind of broaden your mind. And Chloe, you just spoke to earlier, you were saying something about kind of using the camera as almost like a tool to have these kinds of braver kind of conversations between the two of you. So I wondered kind of about that journey for you in terms of maybe how you felt about those kinds of conversations that you're having early on, you know, and how you felt about having those conversations on camera versus, you know, sort of years into the making when you're saying that these are helping to kind of broaden your mind. And I wonder if there's things that you learnt about yourself as well through these conversations on camera.
So the camera wasn't an issue. I think it really helped us. I'd say to Chloe, she questions everything. So that's why it's brought us here. And she asked the right questions, and the camera really made it easy. It's like this third party, and especially she had the little camcorders. It wasn't like big cameras and lights, and so it's much easier to tell the story. And I wasn't worried about telling the story because I've been waiting to tell this story, and we've been talking about it, and it really brought it all together when Chloe questioned everything. And it was like this third party, even to speak to my mom. It was good that she went, and because I've tried all my life and I couldn't. So it was really good that Chloe was there and she was able to go and talk to my mom and try to understand her more and her life more.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up if anyone's got... Yes. Hi. Oh, I think we've got a mic. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, incredible film. I feel like it's sitting in my body, and also don't know how to work this into a conversation about film, but I'm sorry you guys went through the experiences you went through. Yeah, really incredible the way you've turned this into the film. I really loved the artistry and the visual motifs you used as well. And one of them that kind of kept recurring was this intense close-up zoom. So I wondered whether you, Chloe, could talk a bit about how and when you decided to incorporate that style into your film.
Thank you. When I got the camcorder, I was just playing around with it, and a lot of the material that I was shooting at the beginning, I did not expect to go in the film, so I was really just using it as a little toy. And the zoom on that thing is just so fun. And I was, zooming into random things without even thinking. It was just kind of wherever my mind was taking me. And then I found I just kept doing it on my mum's face. And I was like, okay, clearly I'm trying to get somewhere. And it felt like this way to try and get into her head without fully being able to. And now, so I had a baby 6 months ago, and those kinds of shots are coming to mean something completely different to me now. And I look at my son looking at me, and he's really just taking in these little details of my face. And I get so moved thinking back to the film and how I was looking at my mother. And it's just, these cycles of looking at our parents. And, yeah, so, that wasn't my intention when making it, but it's come to mean that to me now.
Any other questions? Yes, thank you.
Just to echo, massive thanks for a incredibly beautiful film, and I echo the kind of impact it's had. I think I wanted to pick up on the third question that you asked of Rozana, but to ask it both to Chloe and Rozana, which is obviously there is so much intimacy and love that's interwoven through the film and tells us a lot on camera. about your relationship, but it's also when we're talking about through art about very multi-layered subjects, which we could name intergenerational trauma, but essentially it's beginning to try and explore and poke and expose some of our closest truths. I think I'm really interested to know more about the conversations you would have had, Chloe, even to begin interrogating those truths in such an intimate space using art. And I take your point, Rozana, about the camera eventually being a kind of third party and quite therapeutic. But kind of how did those, as a maker and as somebody who is bringing a camera into the room in such a deep setting, both with yourself, Rozana, and with your nana, Chloe, like, how did you introduce that? And I'm sure it was over time, but I'm just fascinated to know.
Yeah. Well, I think, firstly, it took my mum a while to even get her head around me wanting to do art. She was very upset when I told her I wanted to go to art school. And so, it's been a long process of even her coming around to me making things. Now I think she gets it. But and so I think by the time I started this film, it had been a few years already of me beginning to work with personal material, and a film I had made for my graduate show was also using personal material about my mum and her sister. And so we kind of started there, and not many people saw that work. And I think when we started it, I don't know about you, I'm not sure I thought so many people would see it. It felt like, something that we were doing for ourselves firstly, and also I did have a sense that it could reverberate beyond us. But I wasn't really sure of the scale. And so we didn't really talk about that necessarily. I think it was just it felt like this thing that we wanted to do.
And I think you also picked up on things that we talk about as grown-ups, and as children, I suppose you picked up there's something going on, and we kind of very vaguely had conversations, but not on a deeper level, like when the camera was on.
Yeah, I think the camera became this excuse to have much deeper conversations, and there's no way we would have talked about all of these things in depth. I learned so much, like many of the things that I learned, like about, I think this is in the film, about you sleepwalking. Yeah. And there are many little things that I just didn't know about you.
And Rozana, I wondered, do you have any kind of conversations about the edit between the two of you, or how did those kinds of conversations go?
Yes, we watched a few. I've learned a little bit more about film now, the art world. Yeah, so Chloe showed me a few cuts, that's what they call it, yeah. And what I said to Chloe is from the beginning, we tell the story, but we don't, in the process, we need to make sure we don't hurt anyone or point fingers, or we just need to understand. Even my mom's life is, she's had a terrible life, and she's a victim herself. So I think Chloe was very kind in that manner. I think you told the story really well.
Yeah, it was. I started showing cuts to my mum once I felt like it had got to a point where I was ready to share it, I guess, and to explain to you what a rough cut was, and it was super important to me that she would be happy with it, and we went kind of back and forth, especially with how Nana was portrayed, and there were a few cuts where it felt like people came away from watching it really very, very angry with her, and not really feeling her perspective. But and you were really helpful in pointing those things out to me, and just being like, okay, I think this is a bit too harsh on her, and moving kind of back and forth between that balance. And then very close to when we were, I think it was like a month before Picture Lock, we rented a screening room in London, and we went with my mum and all her friends who you saw in the film, and some of their daughters, and we screened the film. And it was so important to me that they would understand it and be able to talk about it, and but I wasn't really sure. And then after that, after it ended, we went to the pub and just talked for hours. And I'd known these women my whole life, but I hadn't heard them talking in the way that they had. And so I think at that point it felt like, okay, we've done what we wanted to do.
And the way in which the film ends, that your Nana is like, you know, liberated from, or she liberates herself from that relationship is such an incredibly powerful ending, and a sort of, I don't know, you know, a kind of sense of hope, and a kind of message of it's not too late. And, you know.
I just on that, so shortly after we premiered the film, sadly Nana passed away, and we had pretty soon after we filmed that last scene, we applied for a visa for her to come and live with us in the UK. The Home Office rejected it. We put in an appeal, but in that time we were waiting for the appeal date, and her health really rapidly deteriorated, and so very sadly she passed still in Sri Lanka. She had moved out of her home, but you know, it's even more meaningful to be able to give her that final moment, even though she wasn't physically able to free herself. She did in her mind, and she, you know, she was, I just, you know, every time I see that final moment, I feel this lightness in her, and it's like, I feel so, glad that she could have that.
And I didn't know that happened. Chloe went to Sri Lanka and you filmed that part, and when I watched one of the final cuts, I saw the last part, and it was just amazing. You know, that it really, that was a big surprise. And
Well, she had said it to you before, but I think you didn't believe it. You were like, I'm not going to believe it until but on that trip, something had really changed, and
Got time for one final question.
Hi, I just wanted to say that the film was absolutely incredible. I'm actually just here watching it with my mum this evening, so it's really special to be able to watch it and understand, because my mum's from the Philippines, and a lot of the stuff that we were watching was really meaningful. My main question was just that when you were kind of filming, how did you know that it was going to be so raw and open and honest with the audience? Because I could tell this film was going to be about motherhood and generations of women, but then it kind of took on this whole other dimension with obviously all the personal details of what happened in your family. And I guess my big question is, how did you find the bravery to share that story with all of us here?
I get it from you. I just, you know, I think you're such a huge role model in terms of the sharing, and you're so brave, and
you were brave to actually do a big film on it, so
it just kind of comes, I don't know, and I think with something like this it just felt like it had to be done. I'm not sure, I feel like I'd be still really stuck in this angry place if I hadn't done it.
And brave twice over, I would say. You know, once to make the film in the first place, and secondly, you know, to be touring with it as you are now, getting it out in the world, and you know, sharing your story with us on screen, but then sharing it you know, again in rooms like this. And I've just heard so much about the incredible like responses that this film has solicited, so you know, like, thank you for that, and for sharing, you know, with us this evening. And congratulations again on the response that you've had to this film.
Thank you. And, with a film like this, it really takes recommendations for other people to see it. So, if it resonated with you, please do share. It's going to be in select cinemas from Friday. You can find showtimes at Conic. Oh, it's not on the screen anymore. Conic.film. And let people know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. For anyone who's got a couple of minutes, we've got surveys just to ask what you thought of the film and of this event. If you wouldn't mind on your way out, and as Chloe said, please do spread the word. Independent films like this thrive off word of mouth. Please do tell your friends to go see it from Friday when it's in cinemas around the UK. And thank you again to Suren, to Rozana, and to Chloe. Thank you.
Thank you.